Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are in the world. I'm David Amos, a member of the Trusted Connectivity Alliance communications team, and I'd like to warmly welcome you to this webinar exploring TCA's SIM, eSIM, and 5G SIM market insights for 2021. Before handing you over to Klaus Dietze, GZEC and Devrient Rep and Chair of the Trusted Connectivity Alliance Board of Directors, there are a few housekeeping points that I would like to quickly walk through. For your convenience, this is a recorded webinar and attendees can pause at any time. All attendees had the opportunity to submit questions when registering for today's webinar. Our aim is to address as many of these during our main presentation, but we will end today's session with a short Q&A to answer some specific questions received. You may also submit questions throughout today's webinar using the dashboard function on the right-hand side of your screen. If your question is not addressed during today's webinar, we will reply individually by email following the session. Now, I'll pass you over to Klaus to begin our presentation.
Yeah, many thanks, David, for this kind introduction. And of course, also a warm welcome from my side to this webinar of the Trusted Connectivity Alliance. And before we start, I would first of all like to note that this webinar is actually the first one out of a series of webinars that the TCA is planning to hold this year. So please watch out and stay tuned. Follow us on our social media channels, LinkedIn, for instance. There is more to come. Don't miss it. I would also like to introduce the TCA to the ones of you who may not be that familiar with what we are actually doing. So firstly, TCA is a global non-profit industry association, and we are working to enable trust in a connected future. We are developing technical specifications, guidelines, and requirements, as well as supporting test specifications and tools that promote advanced security, interoperability, and also performance across what we call the global TRE ecosystem. We are providing also exclusive statistical insights into the global temper-resistant element ecosystem. And that is based on members, market, and actual shipment data. And as it is based on actual shipment data, that of course offers great insights into industry trends, into key industry trends. And that is also, of course, then trusted by stakeholders across the mobile ecosystem. And this webinar is actually part of this initiative and of this activity. TCA also collaborates with other industry associations, such as GSMA, ETSI, Global Platform, and Eurosmart, just to name a few. And our members also participate across different technical industry associations and standard development organizations. And we are doing that together with a common objective to support the continued standardization and also the continued evolution of our ecosystem. And we do that by contributing to and by shaping key industry initiatives. We also develop a range of educational resources to inform our stakeholders, both on the benefits of the various TRE form factors and on the benefits of its technologies and technologies in general, in order to drive the sustained growth of trusted connectivity across those industries where security is actually paramount. TCA members are global leaders in security, and you can see all the big names and all the great companies listed here. And they are also leaders within the TRE ecosystem. And I've mentioned and used the term TRE already quite frequently, and we are continuing to do that within this webinar. So therefore, let me give you a short introduction into what a TRE is, right? TRE stands for temper-resistant element, and it can either be a standalone secure element or a secure enclave that is integrated into a larger SoC. And both of these options, they are consisting of secure hardware and also of secure software, and is providing resistance against logical and physical attacks. It can be understood as a generic platform that is capable of hosting secure applications together with their confidential and cryptographic data. And of course, very prominent examples are SIM, eSIM, and integrated SIM as applications that are residing on such a TRE. I also would like to give you some information on our strategic priorities. So TCA is on a regular basis reviewing its strategic objectives. And for this year, 2022, we are focusing on a number of key initiatives. And those ones include eSIM interoperability. For example, we have created the interoperable profile specification, which is used actually in all eSIMs out there in the field and which is referenced also by GSMA within their eSIM specifications. And of course, we would like to further drive the evolution of this specification. We are upgrading it to new versions of the SCP specifications from the GSMA, and we are also extending it by, for instance, including a new type of profile. We are at the moment working on creating a minimum profile template for the IoT. And as we are having members that are key players in this ecosystem, of course, we are continuing to improve interoperability even further. The second topic is IoT. In particular, we would like to expand the eSIM benefits to IoT use cases, and we also would like to leverage the SIM, eSIM, and also integrated SIM technology for IoT security. And that includes a couple of activities. I will come to them later on. First one is mentioning GSMA's activity to create a set of specifications for eSIM for IoT. We are also looking into optimizing IoT protocols, and we are of course also continuing our collaboration with GSMA on a technology that is called IoT Safe, where the SIM is used as a root of trust for IoT use cases and applications. The third topic that I would like to highlight here is optimizing 5G SIM and eSIM technology, in particular for 5G private networks. We are seeing that this is going to be a big opportunity for the whole industry. And we are also including technologies like 5G network slicing use cases. And we also would like to drive, of course, 5G device security through our technologies. And last but not least, the TRE market monitoring process. Of course, we are continuously working on enhancing this process and adding more and more segments and technologies to deliver you even more industry-leading insights. Before I start with the actual content of this webinar, I would like to also give you a short introduction into the market monitoring process. So that is actually the basis for the figures that we are presenting here today. I would like to state at the beginning that the TCA is representing about 80%, depending on the market segment and on the region, for both SIM and eSIM. And we can therefore be considered as the source for SIM and eSIM market shipments. Our members participate in this market monitoring process. Actually, this is a mandatory requirement for them and their membership, right? And this process is carried out after each quarter. That means members are providing their quarterly shipment data to the TCA in a well-defined and very well-established process. And at the beginning of the following year, so in 2022 for 2021, our members consolidate those figures and provide their shipment data then for the full year. And we as TCA, we are publishing some of the key findings once a year based on the full year shipment data. The broad representation of industry players within our membership makes that insights and those market data strategically important for all our stakeholders. And this holds in particular now in times where we are experiencing a strong transformation towards more and more digital solutions. And if you are interested in a full breakdown of our data and the various segments that we track, then I have some good news for you. This data is available via an annual subscription. And if you want to learn more about this, please reach out to us and contact us on info@trustedconnectivityalliance.org. But now let's have a look into the most interesting market trends that we have seen for 2021. On the following slides, we are going to highlight market trends for the removable UICC SIM, for the eSIM, and also for the 5G SIMs. Let's start with the market for what we call the traditional SIM form factor. So 4FF, 3FF, nano SIM, however you call them, we are all very familiar with them. What we've seen is that also in 2021, this market remained significant. We estimated that the total available market for the SIM was 4.35 billion units in 2021. And that figure includes the removable form factors and the solderable form factors. But, and that is important, it excludes eSIMs. So eSIMs will come on top of that, and we will cover them separately on the following slides. When we compare the figure with the figure that we have reported in 2020, it can be noted that the volumes have been impacted by pressures that were placed on the supply chains. And we had two main root causes for this. The first one still is COVID. And COVID resulted, for example, in the closure of harbors, the closure of production sites, and so on. And we are still seeing this with the current situation, for instance, in China, Shanghai. And of course, in addition to that, there is also some impact that we have seen due to the global chip shortage, and we will mention that later on again. However, I also would like to note that there was a key trend, driven also by the increasing deployments of 5G networks, and that led to an increased demand of higher value SIM products with larger memory sizes. For example, TCA members have reported increased shipments for all products with 128 kilobyte memory and above. And in contrast, the demand for lower value products is declining, most notably for the products with 32 kilobyte memory or less. And I do not want to conclude this slide without giving you also some outlook into 2022. TCA is expecting that the silicon shortage is going to continue in 2022, and it will even reach into 2023. And therefore, we recommend all industry stakeholders to continue to take appropriate measures to ensure seamless business operation. That is really important. It's not over yet, right? However, we are expecting that in 2022, the market for traditional form factors will remain strong and will be approximately in the same dimension as in 2021. And with this, I would like to move over to the next market segment, the eSIM. Global eSIM adoption continued to build in 2021. That's the key message. And despite the considerable ongoing uncertainty that we are seeing in the marketplace, the latest data from the TCA clearly shows that the market demand for both eSIM-enabled devices, but also for eSIM functionality itself continues to increase. And if we look first at the eSIM shipments, our members have reported a volume of 337 million for 2021. And that is now really the shipment data from the TCA member. That's not the total available market. And this is representing a 9% year-on-year increase. And we also found out that this increase can be attributed to the growing uptake of eSIM functionality across all the segments, so across the consumer, enterprise, and also machine-to-machine segment and verticals. Of course, it also needs to be noted that the major share of the volumes is coming from the consumer segment. If you are now looking at what is driving the eSIM shipment volumes, I've mentioned that it is across all the different verticals, consumer, M2M, automotive, and so on. But we have seen the strongest growth within the M2M eSIM shipments, so SGPO2 compliant eSIM shipments, where we've seen a growth rate of 38%. And we also note that M2M and the IoT industry is really exploring the application of eSIM technology for different types of new verticals because there is a need for flexible connectivity and there is also a need for future-proof security solutions. I also would like to state a little bit the situation around IoT and standardization. So a lot of activities are ongoing. However, we also see that a global standard for security has not yet been realized for the IoT. However, we also see that governments and regulatory bodies and also industry groups have started mandating considerably more stringent standards and also considerably more security with regards to consumer IoT. And that, of course, will increase the demand of secure solutions for the IoT. And of course, the TCA is convinced that with our TRE technology, we are having appropriate and very suitable solutions that can be provided to both ensure trusted connectivity to the network, but to also protect the valuable assets that are involved, the data, right? With technology like the IoT Safe that I've mentioned, those assets are protected both at rest and also when being submitted between the devices and a backend system like an IoT cloud. If we look now also at the consumer eSIM segments, I've also stated that there was also some growth, not in the same dimension as for the M2M, but also we have seen some growth there. However, we've also noted that the growth was tempered by the impact of the economic sanctions and the broader geopolitical trends that we have seen and that were impacting the global smartphone market. And that was coupled with the delay of new device launches and also with the reduction of shipped units due to, mentioned already several times, the widely publicized worldwide chip shortage. So that had some impact on the eSIM consumer segment. Increasing adoption of eSIM technology is also being enabled by a well-established global infrastructure. So with this slide, I would like to highlight a little bit the infrastructure aspects. And we see that now this infrastructure that has been established over the last year is now also widely and increasingly utilized by all the major tier 1 and tier 2 operators. We are also seeing network operators that are starting to go what we call eSIM first. That means that they are focusing on supporting eSIM only, and that will give, of course, a further push to that utilization of the infrastructure. In 2021, we saw strong ongoing investment in eSIM subscription manager platforms. Those platforms are enabling the remote provisioning and the lifecycle management of eSIMs. So we've seen strong growth. And building upon that investment, operators, as stated, are actually now increasingly using it to activate and manage their eSIMs and to onboard new customers into their systems. And that is reflected by a significant growth of the number of transactions. We have monitored an increase of the total number of transactions by 55% compared to 2020. Of course, now on a much higher baseline figure than in 2020 compared to 2019, of course. If we are now having a look at the more regional perspective, then this trend is most clearly seen in North America, where there is a very strong operator support for leveraging eSIM and as a channel for onboarding, and that is also combined with a very high number of eSIM-enabled devices that are available there. We are also seeing in Europe that more and more operators are promoting eSIM across their marketing channels. And in Asia, mature markets like Japan and Australia are seeing a very good momentum already. And if we're looking ahead in Asia, then markets like South Korea could see significant acceleration as there is also some regulation coming into force that is benefiting, let's say, the eSIM ecosystem. How will it evolve for 2022? So we see that the eSIM momentum is anticipated to continue in 2022. So there is already a lot of momentum around eSIM, and we can state that it turns into becoming a substantial part of the overall SIM ecosystem. And that is driven, first of all, by now the available and mature specifications, which also leads to increased interoperability, of course, but also by the fact that MNOs are going eSIM first, as I've mentioned already previously. And therefore, overall, TCA is forecasting a double-digit growth for the total available market for eSIMs in this coming year in 2022. And we are also seeing that given the large number of the installed platforms that we are having and the ongoing investment in the infrastructure, we also expect a further significant growth of the eSIM transactions in 2022. So this growth will continue at a very significant level. And of course, momentum is building, the marketplaces evolve, and of course, for us as TCA, it's a strategic priority to promote secure, scalable, and of course also interoperable eSIM deployments. And we are going to continue our work in close collaboration with other industry stakeholders. And I would like to give you a couple of initiatives and explain a couple of topics to you on the next slide, what we are doing there to even foster that growth. So we are doing that in our working groups, and I would like to briefly give you a short introduction into the main working groups that are active in the space of eSIM. The first working group is the eSIM working group as such, and this one is developing and managing what I've mentioned previously, the eSIM interoperable profile package specification. That specification is used in all the eSIMs that are deployed in the field and is standardizing actually the format that is used for remote loading of subscriptions onto the eSIMs across various deployed devices. And of course, that enables then the mobile network operators to load interoperable connectivity profiles in an eSIM, independent or regardless of the SIM vendor. The next topic, I've also briefly mentioned that, is we are pushing also for remote SIM provisioning for the IoT, RSP for IoT. Within this working group, we are guiding and supporting the development of eSIM-related specifications to address the eSIM market evolution and the needs for the IoT. The members of this working group are providing significant contributions also to GSMA working group 7 over there. And that GSMA working group is currently working on creating a technical specification that is enabling eSIM for either network or user interface constrained devices. The third working group is dealing with IoT security applications. In addition to the trusted cellular connectivity that can be provided by the eSIM, for example, protecting the data is essential. So most of the value in the IoT is connected to the data and the services and applications around utilizing this data. And of course, it's important to protect them. We have, for this purpose, established a working group dealing with that and to extend actually also the security capabilities of the SIM and to address the risk of IoT market fragmentation for that. This includes a key initiative that we have progressed and launched in collaboration with the GSMA, which is called IoT Safe. I've mentioned that, but it even goes beyond that, so more will come on this one. And the last working group that I would like to mention here is the Secure Applications for Mobile working group. SAM, Secure Application for Mobile, is may become the next evolutionary step actually for the UICC and the eSIM. That technology is actually standardizing and enabling the convergence of eUICC and embedded secure element applications on the same piece of technology of TRE. And that working group is also dedicated to guiding and supporting the development of the GSMA SAM related specifications. And with this, I would like to conclude our report on the eSIM market segment. And I would like to have a look now on 5G and the 5G SIM. 5G SIM also gained momentum. Yeah. Before we enter into the details, let me highlight that the TCA has created a document that is called a Recommended 5G SIM, a definition. And we have created this document to support the increased momentum for 5G SIM shipments globally, actually. And in 2021, that technical definition document was updated to already align with new use cases that were introduced by Release 16 specifications of 3GPP for 5G phase 2. And if you're not familiar with this document, it actually is supposed to help mobile network operators to maximize their investment in 5G core network infrastructures by selecting the right choice of SIM technology already at 5G launch. And it does this by outlining the different technical capabilities and technical features that are offered by the 5G SIM, and that actually allow the MNOs to leverage the full potential of 5G. And that is also addressing some specific challenges that are posed by the migration towards 5G. TCA has also established a 5G working group, and this team of experts is now working to update the document to be in line with the upcoming Release 17 specifications. So stay tuned again and watch out for that update. We will publish information on this as soon as it's ready. So if we, just as a clarification, so if we are talking about a 5G SIM within the TCA and also within our market monitoring, then we are not simply referring to a SIM that could be used to log on to the non-standalone 5G new radio, a 4G SIM, for instance, but we refer to a SIM that offers the capabilities and features as defined within this recommended SIM definitions paper. And that is already then prepared then also for a 5G standalone network. But now to the figures. 2020 already marked the first year of widespread 5G SIM deployments, and our data showed that there also was a substantial increase in 5G SIM shipments in 2021. To date, we have seen most momentum in North America and then also followed by Asia and Europe. But we all know that 5G is a global phenomenon and that the launch of standalone 5G networks that is taking place will also, of course, increase the momentum further for the recommended 5G SIM. So it's expected that those numbers are growing even further. Just to give you an indication, according to GSMA, they predict that the number of 5G connections will surpass the 1 billion mark in 2022 and the 2 billion mark already by 2025. And also GSMA is reporting a total number of 8.8 billion SIM connections in 2025. And as we are seeing a sunset already slowly taking place of 2G and 3G, that means that together with 5G, 4G will also remain a dominant technology in the coming years. I also would like to mention one notable use case that I've previously elaborated a little bit already, which is specific for 5G, and that is 5G private networks. And also to give you a figure here, in Germany alone, 220 licenses were granted by the federal agency responsible for this. It's called the Bundesnetzagentur. And if you compare that to the public networks existing, this is a huge number, and you can expect this to take place similarly in different regions in the world, of course. And that means that we are seeing that 5G is driving really rapid growth in those private network deployments, and that is creating an opportunity not only for the TRE ecosystem player and all the companies around that, but also for mobile network operators who could, of course, dedicate part of their public networks. They could allocate some network slices, for instance, to address this market demand. Of course, TCA sees a huge benefit for leveraging the 5G SIM and also the eSIM capabilities in such private networks, because if you in particular look at the companies who have been granted such licenses, you can see that they include campuses, industrial districts, Industry 4.0, and also factory automation. So the industrial IoT is a big use case for that, as well as enterprises. So we see that in addition to protecting the connection, also the protection of the data and the assets being involved there is a huge opportunity for the whole industry. And actually with this, I would like to conclude the presentation on the figures and the key trends. I would already like to thank you very much for your attention and will now hand over to David for the Q&A session. Thank you very much, and David, over to you.
Thank you very much, Klaus. Before we start with the Q&A session, I'd just like to remind everyone that a full recording of this session will be made available on the TCA website and also the TCA YouTube channel. You can also keep up to date with TCA's latest specifications, educational resources, and news on the www.trustedconnectivityalliance.org, where you can also sign up for a newsletter for monthly updates straight into your inbox. Also, a reminder, don't forget to follow TCA on Twitter and LinkedIn. Okay, so thank you to everyone for submitting their questions. To kick things off, and something that we haven't addressed yet during our presentation is the integrated SIM. So Klaus, is TCA tracking integrated SIM shipments, and do you have a view on their adoption?
Yeah, thank you, David, for this question. That's a very good one. Until now, to be honest, TCA is not tracking integrated SIM or integrated EUICC as a dedicated segment. Even though the standards have been finalized for the integrated EUICC, the technology is, I would say, still quite new, and its market is, at this point in time, still relatively small. However, what we see is that this technology is now taking off, especially in the IoT, but also potentially in the consumer. And for sure, we are considering, and we are continuously, as I said, reviewing this to include this segment into our process. The little challenge is, of course, that for this, we need to find a very good and clear definition. For instance, distinguishing between integrated SIM and integrated EUICC. We are also having segments on the integrated EUICC that are to some extent having some overlap with eSIM. So it's is something which is ongoing, and I'm sure we will provide some insights in due course.
Perfect, thank you. Next question, just heading back to eSIM. Do you see any hurdles to eSIM adoption in IoT?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we currently, let's put it this way, we currently do have a set of very good specifications that are covering, let's say, M2M and consumer eSIM, right? However, in IoT, we are facing a little bit different challenges and we are having a little bit different requirements. For instance, there are network constrained devices in IoT that are not speaking IoT, IP or SMS, for instance. And of course, there may also be devices that have constraints with regards to the user interface. And I've mentioned already the work that has been done in GSMA Working Group 7 and also in our working group, the TCA Working Group RSP for IoT, where we would like to actually address these requirements and address these types of IoT devices. And therefore, we think that it's important to have this new sets of specifications. And good news is that the requirement specification called SGP 31 was published recently. I think it was by 15th of April. And the work on the technical spec SGP 32 has now started, and this is planned to be ready by Q4 already, Q4 this year. And I'm sure that if we have this will give a further push to the adoption of eSIM also in IoT.
Great, and I think we're coming up to the end of our session, but I think we've got time for one more question. So just to finish off, now talking about integrated SIM and eSIM, so how can we measure security among integrated SIM versus the eSIM? Is common criteria the only evaluation standard?
Yeah, David, thank you for this question. I mean, this is one of the initial questions that that was, let's say, heavily being discussed when the concept of integrated technology came up, right? So the question about the security and how to measure it. But before I answer that, maybe first of all, we may need to distinguish a little bit between the integrated SIM and the integrated EUICC, right? And for the integrated EUICC, which is let's say defined also by the GSMA, both the integrated EUICC and the eSIM, both of them mandate a security certification. And there has been an assurance system, the GSMA ESA, that has been introduced for this purpose. And this assurance system is based on common criteria. And if you're looking and if you want to have security that is reaching levels like EAL4 plus with the famous AVA 1.5 and so on, then a common criteria based system is actually the only viable scheme. For the integrated SIM, so that means SIM technologies that do not support eSIM, this may be different, right? And here you can compare that integrated SIM with a traditional SIM. And for both the traditional SIM and the integrated SIM, a security certification may not be necessary in all the different circumstances, or it may even follow some proprietary schemes, or it may be insured via your trusted SIM supplier, right? So it really depends a little bit which technologies you use and which market requirements you have to satisfy on whether or not you want to have a certified product. However, if you're going for an integrated EUICC or an eSIM, you have to comply with the standards, and they are mandating something which is common criteria based at this point in time.
Okay, well, thank you. Of course, we've now reached the end of our allotted time. Thank you very much to everybody for joining. It's greatly appreciated. Just a quick flag that if your questions that you have submitted hasn't been answered during today's session, we will follow up with individual responses via email. And just a final point, we really appreciate your engagement to make sure that our webinars are as useful and as insightful as possible. So you will receive a short survey following the webinar, and we would appreciate if you could just take a couple of minutes to share your feedback with us. Thank you again, and catch up soon.